And then the third rehearsal, I didn't show up for one reason or another, which came to be one of my biggest regrets. That was awful. How could it suck so much? Sting? Why would Sting want me in his band? I like to hear a dangerous guitar player. So I had my foot on the desk, you know, and I go, do, down, down, and just having a laugh. But he loved it. So I decided I wanted to do Sting. He's one of my heroes. I put him in my top 5. If I could play a 10th as well as he could play, I'd be very, very happy. By playing a combination of Argentine samba music.
You've got the 2 #1 tracks for 2 of the biggest artists in the world.
So I put that kind of rhythm with those chords. Well, what is that? And I'm going, it's my warm-up. And he just said, this is a song. It sounds bigger with less notes. This was a huge education for me. How can something sound bigger with less? When you have a good show, there's no better feeling in the world.
Dominic, thanks for coming on the show. It's fantastic to have you here. This isn't your first time in Prague, I'm sure.
No, I've been here many times in different situations, but of course I love it here. Everybody likes it here, and we're very lucky to be here on a beautiful day.
Yeah, it's gorgeous tonight. So you did a show down in the club tonight?
I will, yeah.
Who's in the band?
I've got an amazing band. I've had the same bass player for many years, so he's kind of like my rock-solid bass player called Nicholas Fishman from Belgium. He's a fantastic player, session player, rock player. Ziv Ravitz is playing the drums. Amazing avant-garde style drummer, but he plays everything that I want him to play. And keyboards today, we have Mike Lindup from the band Level 42.
Great.
Playing keyboards and maybe a bit of vocals.
Fantastic.
So they're my mates as well.
I was just saying to you earlier on that I bumped into Gary Husband and Mark King, and which you go back to with Level 42 back in the day.
Yeah.
But so if we could just jump into I like to try and do things chronologically, so that we can kind of get a storyline moving through the podcast. So you grew up in Argentina, in Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
And how was that growing up as a kid there?
Oh, I mean, to me it felt normal. I grew up speaking English at home in the Anglo-Argentine community, but the schoolyard and school was in Spanish.
Right, sure.
And it was great, very outdoors kind of atmosphere. Everything outdoors, people running around, doing sport, and riding horses, but music was always there. This is the thing, as growing up, I remember listening to folklore music and Argentine folk music, really. Tango music as well, but tango music is more from Buenos Aires, like the center of Buenos Aires. But so, I just had a great childhood growing up there. And when I was 11, we bolted and left for America.
Because your mum played the piano and your dad played guitar. He played blues, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
And the sister played guitar and...
Yeah, it was a very musical family. My dad was very influenced by Argentine music, so he used to play blues and Argentine music. My mother is Irish, used to play Irish folk songs on the piano. So I was very lucky to be brought up around that. And my sister used to listen to the Beatles and the Stones and Creedence Clearwater and Simon and Garfunkel and stuff like that. So I was very lucky to have quite a wide musical background.
And on the Spanish side, well, I suppose on the was it you were listening to Brazilian guitar players or Spanish guitar players?
Yeah, actually, because my dad was fascinated with Brazilian music, so he used to travel to Brazil for his work, and he'd always bring back records from Brazil, and I really identified with that. I connected with it immediately, especially guitarists like Baden Powell which sounds like a scout. I think he just took the name. You know, he liked the sound of it.
Right.
Little did he know he was a scoutmaster. But the music of Antonio Carlos Jobim, all that bossa nova music, I was really seduced by that at a young age. So that's when I started playing guitar. I started by playing a combination of Argentine samba music and playing bossa nova tunes, sort of, not very well, but that was my starting point. Because in Argentina, in every house you go to, there's an acoustic guitar.
Sure.
A nylon string guitar.
It's the main instrument in the country.
It's just like everyone has a guitar. So it was quite normal to pick up a guitar and start playing it.
More guitar than the piano, you'd think.
Very much so, yeah. And the great thing, the difference between a guitar and a piano is that a guitar is an instrument that you can carry around with you. It's a real kind of nomadic instrument. You put it on your back, you can ride your bicycle with it. You can't do that with a piano. You know what I mean? So
Exactly,
you could take a guitar to a beach, and so it was really like that. People always having sing-songs.
Yeah, and I suppose they're an outdoor culture, so it's better to have a guitar than
Exactly.
roll out the piano from the living room.
So it was normal to have guitars with destroyed strings, with salt on them, and like sand in the guitar, that sort of thing. It was a great upbringing.
So you think that those early days where the onus was more on sort of South American guitar players than it was, say, even on Spanish guitar players or contemporary guitar players, what you were listening to?
Yeah, I was listening to mostly South American music. I mean, of course, I was listening to the Beatles and the Stones, but I remember distinctly around the time I was 10 or 11, around the time I was about to leave, when I heard Jimi Hendrix, it all changed. I thought, how is this even possible that someone can make a guitar sound like that and reach me
right deeply,
just right in the gut? And that's when I started taking an interest much more in American music,
Americana,
and that coincided with moving to America. So of course I moved to America. Then I was exposed to the whole American side of music, which was mostly singer-songwriter type of music, like James Taylor, Carole King, Neil Young, who's Canadian. But more, I was listening to a lot of that style of music, the American folk music, and rock music too. I mean, the closest I got to listening to American rock, I suppose, would have been Simon and Garfunkel.
Wow.
And Creedence, of course. But I didn't really listen to anything else except Hendrix. I was obsessed with Hendrix, and that pretty much opened my imagination enough to want to do it seriously.
So that was Wisconsin you moved to?
Yeah.
So I also read that you were the only white guy in an all-black band at one point.
That's right. You did your research. Yeah, when I was in high school in Wisconsin, I joined a band of... because I loved soul music. I just love American rhythm and blues. And there was a local band called The Love Expressions.
Oh, The Love Expressions.
who took me in.
Expressions.
I was only 16, and they were looking for a guitar player, and I just knocked on their door saying, look, I'm your guy. And they looked at me and thought, well, probably not, but let's hear you play. And I already sort of, by the age of 16, I could already play a bit of funk and blues, but mostly funk, because I was really into Brothers Johnson and stuff like that, and Quincy Jones' early records, because Quincy Jones used to produce Brothers Johnson, and a lot of that music, and Stevie Wonder. I wanted to do that, so I joined a band, and they took me in the back of their van around the Midwest area doing gigs. So I was coming home at 2 a.m, on a school night after doing gigs. You've been a fantastic audience. This is a beautiful place. It's unusual. I've never played anywhere like this. And it's great. I think it's great because it's original, and you guys are cool, and it's fun. And the garden is nice, and the people are cool. So thank you very much for making us feel welcome.
And what was that Hendrix album that sort of started it all off you?
Well, it was Are You Experienced? And he did 3 studio albums. I mean, all of it. I got all of it.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's the Woodstock performance.
The Woodstock performance, and also Hendrix in the West was an album that really grabbed my imagination. It was a live album, I think mostly recorded in California, and maybe San Francisco. It wasn't a studio release, but it was that's the album that really grabbed me, where he did Red House, Voodoo Child, and things like that.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that no one's ever bettered him, really, has they?
I agree with you. He set the bar there. And then, of course, and everyone's kind of congregating down there. I don't think he was the most skillful guitar player ever. It's the same as, there's a lot of incredibly skillful players now. But that's a crazy argument. It's like, John McEnroe at his best wouldn't make the top 100 tennis players, but he was the best and very inspirational, the same way that Hendrix was and still is to me. And I don't think anyone's come close. There's a few people who I really like Jeff Beck, and I love Eric Clapton. Great blues player. And the thing about Hendrix that I find interesting is that the way that he played, his style of blues playing, was quite English.
Yeah.
Because that's where he got discovered. Because he was kind of discarded in America, and he went to London. He was playing the Marquee, and
that's right.
And John Lennon, David Bowie, everyone was showing up. Clapton, who is this guy? And he just blew everyone's mind. And so he got to know that London scene quite well, and playing up and down the country. And then the Americans were going, "Oh, we want him back."
Yeah.
And so they claimed him as one of theirs. But of course, it doesn't really matter there. But I like that British blues feel, like early Fleetwood Mac, style. I just love British style blues. And Eric Clapton was probably the best one of the lot.
I mean, it's interesting that time because obviously, even on the singer side, you had Otis Redding and people like that coming over to the UK and really getting the respect they were due that they couldn't get in America.
Very interesting, yeah. But I mean, maybe the Americans were confused about what they wanted to hear around that time. And for blues people to become mainstream might have been a problem for them. Like when, cut to like 40 years later, when rap became sort of mainstream, it didn't go down well at first, but now it's arguably, it is mainstream now. And, but I really like what the American blues players brought to the British music scene.
Yeah, it was amazing. Just speaking of guitar players, so the new breed of, incredible, say, John McLaughlin style guitar players, Matteo Mancuso.
Yeah.
What's your view on those kind of players?
I love him. I think he's fantastic. It's very easy to kind of criticize someone like who's that good. I mean, it's like I think he's a fantastic guitar player, and so knowledgeable. And he does shows, as some people say, well, he's just a YouTube guitarist. No, he's not. He's a bloody good guitar player. He does gigs. He's got a great band. I don't know who they are, but I've seen his bass player, his drummer. These guys are amazing. And I'm a huge fan of his. I don't play music like that because his technique and feel is just so precise that it's almost, it's just mind-boggling. There's kind of almost no imperfection, and that puts me slightly ill at ease.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like to hear a dangerous guitar player sort of go off. Like, that's what I love about Jimmy Page, is you never know when he's going to... He's always on the edge of that cliff. And he's just dancing on the edge of the cliff. I don't feel that Matteo is going to fall over. Mm-hmm. It's almost too trustworthy. But if I could play a tenth as well as he could play, I'd be very, very happy.
If I'm being honest, though, I would prefer you as a guitar player to him. I'm not just being nice, because the sense of melody, I think he's amazing. Funny enough, I ended up watching some of his stuff this morning when I was researching for this, and I listened to it once, twice, and then I kind of had enough. It was great, but I need to hear the melody coming through.
Well, yeah, it's because a lot of people have habits when they play music, a lot of vocalists do that. The inflections with a melody. Who sings a melody just the way it is? Like, you might listen to Mariah Carey singing, let's say, a jazz standard. It would be, or Christina Aguilera, two singers who I totally admire, but they can't seem to sing the melody just the way it is, because they've got so much chops.
Yeah.
See, Matteo's got he's got too much chops. Yeah. So if it's available to him, he's going to do it. I wish I had those chops, because maybe if I did have those chops, you wouldn't like my playing so much. Yeah. You know what I mean? Whereas John McLaughlin, there's another one. It's almost like his vocabulary and his skill is just so beyond amazing that he can't help but play the way he does.
I mean, he influenced so many players. Like even Eddie Van Halen used to love John McLaughlin.
Yeah.
And you can hear it in some of the early John McLaughlin, some of the hammering on kind of he was doing. Yeah. And then obviously Eddie took it to another level. Yeah. But I think he's definitely one of the masters, John McLaughlin.
He's one of my heroes. I put him in my top 5. Yeah, for sure. Because actually a lot of what I've taken from him has kind of found its way in Sting's music. Because I love the way he arpeggiates. You know, those Mahavishnu records, well, those kind of weird arpeggios. I mean, we know he can shred his forever, all night. But what interests me more with John McLaughlin, number one, is his writing. He's a great writer. Who writes really good stuff? Mm-hmm. There's very few instrumental guitarists who do. John is probably number one. And he has a great way with arpeggios and chord voicings that's just been... It's found its way into my style.
So just getting back to, so you're in the States, you're soaking up all of that musical heritage and it's wonderful. And then you move to the UK. So like we were 13, was it? Yeah, 13. So how did the music that was going on there?
Well, it took me by surprise. It's like it really, I just thought, wow.
Was this the punk era?
You know, this is before. It's kind of complicated because I lived in America for a couple of years. Then I moved to England. Then I moved back to America. Right. And then back to England again. So, but that's neither here nor there. But when I moved to England the first time, when I was 12, it was the first time I heard Queen and Led Zeppelin and Robin Trower and a lot of really English bands, and The Who. I'd never heard The Who before. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And Black Sabbath, Bad Company, you know, the golden era of rock. And,
sure.
But at the same time, I was listening to Elton John, great British music, great songwriting. It really...
Brilliant. Great band as well.
Great band with, what was it, Dave Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing guitar player. Great drummer. I mean, the whole band was amazing. But so I was really kind of seduced by that music, and I kind of went all in, you know, with it. And I didn't really kind of get too involved with or attached to the prog scene, because I know everybody was into Genesis and Yes and King Crimson. I didn't really get that. It sounded all a bit too A-levels for me. It was too posh. Almost... Everything was like in 9/8 or 11/8, and it's like, what are they on about? You know, but great musicianship. You know, with Genesis, obviously Phil Collins playing the drums. I thought, this is amazing drumming. I'd never heard drumming that good before, coming from England, except for Bonham, of course.
And your first band, obviously, King Swamp, and so that got signed with Bob Clearmountain mixing.
That's right. Well done for you doing your research.
Pleasure. And, but I had to listen to the record as well, because only one of them is online. The other one I couldn't get, but I listened to the first one. It kind of reminded me a little bit of In Excess somehow.
Exactly. I totally agree. And actually, it was Bob Clearmountain who mixed a few of those In Excess singles. So well spotted. Yeah, that was great experience. That was much later, you know. But actually, going back, because then I moved back to America when I was like 15, and then I got thrown back into the American scene, although the very much the soul and funk. That's when I got into soul and funk, and that's when I joined that soul band. And so then I spent my sort of 15 and 16 and 17 in America and just listening to Americana music again. So now I'm listening to Boston, Bob Seger, Fleetwood Mac, Rumors,
brilliant,
that sort of thing. It was around that time. And so I was back into the American, and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, which I loved.
Me too.
I love the sound of it, the sound of that jangly guitar. It's like, that's a huge influence on me. And Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders, you know, that sort of jangly, birdsy sort of way of approach of guitar playing. So if you mix that jangle with John McLaughlin type chords, you kind of, I was starting to find my own way of interpreting music, you know.
Finding your own sound.
But then what happened is I moved to England in 78, and I couldn't believe what was in front of me with the music scene, because I missed out on the whole punk scene. I wasn't there for it, because it really only lasted from 76 to 79. And then it just died. It just disappeared. And I caught the very tail end of that. I couldn't understand what was going on. I was listening to this stuff. It's like, how can people be listening to this? Of course, there was the American version, which was the Ramones and a few other bands.
Television. Maybe kind of more new wave, I suppose.
Yeah, it was new wave. It was actually, interestingly enough, the American punk scene had a lot of. It sounded like it had its roots in jazz or in more kind of old American blues and jazz. You could sort of hear that. Whereas the English scene had its roots more in theatre.
Yeah.
You know, the Rocky Horror Show.
Yeah, sure.
For instance, which it was around that time that I was in London. And I suddenly felt irrelevant. I arrived in England, aged 18, and I thought, well, what am I doing here? I don't understand what's going on. That's when there were some other bands that were around that were more interesting, like Dire Straits, but Blondie was around. Blondie was huge. Pretenders were huge in UK, as you can probably remember this time. And the Police. I remember I liked this band. I wasn't obsessed with it. I never bought any of their records, but I thought, this is really good. This kind of weird blonde guy who's like in a trio. And I thought, wow, it's a trio like Cream or Hendrix. Sure. Who has a trio? You know what I mean? Yeah. Because everything was usually two guitars, you know, like Thin Lizzy, you know, guitarists playing in unison, long hair and tight jeans and very cool, leather jackets. But there's this band with, you know, peroxide hair, and I was always interested in that. But, you know, the music scene there was very, very surprising. So I didn't know what to do. So all I did in that time is I thought, forget trying to get involved with this. I just want to concentrate on the Brazilian music and playing classical guitar. I thought, I don't have a place in rock or jazz or funk or blues because I don't really know what I want to do. I like American. I don't understand English. So let's just go back to what I like the best, which is just playing acoustic guitar. And I wanted to be a sort of acoustic guitar player for the rest of my life.
Well, it's kind of timeless, though, isn't it? I mean, the thing about music comes and goes, but that whole acoustic guitar playing thing, you can pick that up at any point in your career, and it'll never date.
No.
So I think that's, you know, the one saving grace of when you go down that route. Though I hate to make the choice, my options are decreasing mostly rapidly. Well, we will see. This time, I really have to make a mind. It's plain to see. It's you or me. Monday, I can't wait till Tuesday. Friday, that's my vibe. Wednesday will be fine. Thursday, don't hold my mind. Friday, jumping a little bit ahead then, so how did the Level 42 hookup happen?
Well, I was in Guildhall School of Music because I was there studying classical guitar and composition. So I was there, and I dropped out after a year, like all cool people did. And but I stayed on to carry on with the composition because I was interested in that. And Mike Lindup, who's in my band tonight,
brilliant.
He was in the one of my contemporaries at Guildhall. He just asked me, do you want to have a jam session with a couple of guys in one of the rehearsal rooms? And I went, yeah, sure, whatever. In comes Mark King, who's a drummer, who just picked up a bass because he was working in a music store, but he just kind of learned how to play bass.
Wow.
Only a couple of weeks earlier.
Get out of town.
No, he brought in this JD bass, and it's like, he's a drummer. and Phil Gould. I mean, they're all drummers.
Right.
And but somebody had to play bass, so Mark thought, oh, I'll do it. So he picked up a bass. He had a good time with it, you know. So I thought, wow, did you really just start playing bass? He seemed to be a natural at it.
Right.
He wasn't doing slapping then. It was fingerstyle. I thought, this is very staccatos. So it was him, Phil Gould, Mike, and myself. We just had a jam. One day it was a bit messy, it sounded good, and then we left it. And then the second week we had another jam. Sounded good. I wasn't particularly blown away by it, but it was fun, something to do. And then the third rehearsal, I didn't show up for one reason or another, which came to be one of my biggest regrets at the time. And so then Phil Gould brought his brother in, Boone Gould, to replace me. So I thought, okay, well, have at it. And then cut two, they get signed and it's all huge. And I thought, oh my God, I really blew my career there. But having said that, if I had been in that band, I wouldn't have taken the route that I took.
But you did play on the albums. You played on two
I
records.
played on a couple of albums because I'm still mates with them. I'm still friends with Mark.
Was Gary Husband in the band?
No, oh yeah, Gary was in the band. Yeah.
On the records you played on,
Yeah,
he was in the band.
He was in the band on both of those records. That's right. But I wasn't in the band per se. But sometimes they would bring me in to do some of the tricky bits or whatever, or just have fun because we were still mates, even though we weren't in the band together. Mike has always been my friend, and I've always got on well with Mark. He's a fantastic musician.
He's a funny guy as well.
He's a very funny guy, intelligent, brilliant musician, probably the best timing of any bass player I've ever worked with.
I'll tell you a little story about him. I met him recently. He was at a Jack Bruce tribute thing, and Tony Remy was there, the guitar player.
Yeah, I know
him. Guitar player for years. I produced Jack Bruce's records, the last one he made before he died. Anyway, so we were all there, and Tony said it was in the Gibson store. They have a little place that you can do shows on a Gibson. And earlier on, he'd been hanging with Mark, and he said, "Oh, I love that guitar, man. It's just really beautiful." And Mark just went down and bought it for him and gave it to him.
No way.
He did. Honestly, I was there when he did it. He handed it to him. We were all sitting on the couch. I was sitting there with Gary Husband, Phil Manzanera, and he just came up to Tony and said, "Here you go," and he gave him the guitar. True story.
No way.
Yeah, that was like about 6 weeks ago.
Shows you what a gentleman and a scholar.
What a diamond he is.
Diamond geezer.
He's a diamond.
He lives in the Isle of Wight. He's never really left there. Amazing musician. Incredible.
So, obviously, from that then, I'm trying to get the timeline right. So, when did you get the call from Chrissie Hynde? Because you know, there's the whole Chrissie Hynde Pretenders period.
Well, what happened is I was trying to forge this career as an acoustic guitarist and all that. And I was playing in the Edinburgh Festival and, kind of that sort of scene. It wasn't really working for me as a career. And I remember when I was 24 actually, I got married and I had my first kid. And I remember thinking, oh shit, I need to make a living now. So I thought, okay, enough with trying to be the acoustic guitar hero and all that. I need to join a band. I need to get a job. So the first job that I got was working with the World Party. I put myself up for playing in that band. And there's a long history between Carl Wallinger and I. We were at school together. So I just contacted him and said, look, Carl, do you need a guitar player? And he said, well, yeah. So I joined that band. That was my first touring band, like touring in America. We had a single out. We were signed to Chrysalis and moving around and, touring in Europe, a little bit of a hit.
Sure.
And that was really fun. And then I joined another band called King Swamp, which we were talking about earlier with Bob Clearmountain producing. And then I'm playing much more electric now. And I became a session player. Suddenly people are calling me up to do sessions, which it was never part of my plan to be a session player. And suddenly I'm like doing sessions everywhere and in different styles. And that was fun. And so then I'm on tour with my band King Swamp in America. We're playing the Roxy on Sunset. You know that venue.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Next to the Rainbow.
Yeah.
We're doing our gig. And it was a good gig and everything. All fine. I'm in the studio. I'm back in England in the studio with Bob Clearmountain recording the second King Swamp album. And while I'm in the control room with Bob Clearmountain and the guys, there's a phone call from me. And it's from, hey, Dom, this girl called Chrissie on the phone for you. And I go, Chrissy? I don't know anyone called Chrissy. And then I said, Chrissy who? And then the assistant says, Chrissy Hind. And I'm going, get out of here. No way. So I pick up the phone and go, hello. And she says, hi, this is Chrissy. And I'm going, Chrissy? She says, Chrissy Hind from the Pretenders. And I go, really? Hi, what can I do for you? And she said, a friend of mine saw you play at the Roxy a month ago. Do you want to join the Pretenders? And I went, what? All my friends around me, But, so I said, wait a minute, let's take the call in another room. So I took the call in another room. I said, what do you, I don't understand. My friend saw you play at the Roxy and she assures me that you're the right guy for my band. Do you want the job? And I went, well, surely we need to meet or play together or have a jam and before you make that kind of a decision. She said, no, I've already made up my mind. We've made up it's decided.
Right.
So yes or no. And I said, I still need to meet you. So I met her in London shortly after that call. And I'm sitting there with her like she knew me forever. We're sitting down having coffee, not talking about music, just hanging, coffee.
Shooting the breeze.
I met the kids, saw her house, well, what are we doing? And then she said, let's go and have lunch. So we went out for lunch and did that. And then this kind of thing went on every day for like a couple of weeks, where I'd be around her house. One time, Terence Trent D'Arby came round, like, wow. And then she's talking about Iggy Pop being her friend, and she's giving me Iggy Pop anecdotes, and we still haven't played any music. And I said to her, Chrissy, do you think we should jam?
Get in the room.
I'm in the band, but we're not playing any music. What's going on? And she said, it's okay, I've got a session booked soon. We're going in the studio to record our album. So I went, okay, well, what are the songs? No, it's all right, you'll figure it out. So cut to, I go to Abbey Road. We had a session with Mitch Froome and Chad Blake. Mm-hmm. A formidable production team, as you know.
Absolutely brilliant, yeah.
In Studio 2 in Abbey Road, the best, I couldn't believe, The
Beatles room.
Yeah. And so there we are in Abbey Road, and except we arrive about 7 hours late because Chrissy needed to go shopping, she needed to drop her kids off, she needed to do this, that, and the other. We had lunch, late lunch, boozy lunch, I think it was, and it's like, well, we got to be in the studio. So she turns up at the studio, late, Chad and Mitch are there. She gets behind the mic, she's still wearing her coat, probably holding her shopping bags, because she used to love to shop. And she got behind the mic and she did a vocal for a song called Sense of Purpose in one take. I thought, what? It was Chrissy Hind, it was her character that was coming through the mic. She wasn't like, warm up, get in the zone. It's just, this is who she is. That's how people do it. It's not about, you don't need auto-tune, you don't need any of that. It's just, are you delivering the message? And then she said, okay, now your turn. I had a roadie lined up, so he set up a Vox AC30. I thought, I'm getting a Vox, and I want to play a Telecaster. Let's be jangly, like the Pretenders, like the Birds. So, sorry, this is a long story, but it's worth it. So then I thought, think Birds, think jangly. So I start playing, and it's working. Chad and Mitch are kind of going, yeah, this is cool. I heard the song, I could figure it out pretty quickly, because I'm a muso. Mm-hmm. I understand how to do this stuff. And so I thought, jangly and, sort of pre-REM-y, but kind of REM-y, and it worked. But she wasn't even really paying any attention. She just thought, well, of course it works, because you're the guitarist. Whatever you do is fine. She's still filing her nails while I'm playing. And then we finish, and I only get 1 or 2 takes max. I was like, let me do it again, please, please, please. Then double track it, because in those days we used to double track the jangly guitar. It sounded wider. It's very 90s, or 89 actually. Mm-hmm. It sounded great. She didn't even want to listen back to it. She thought, well, that's fine. So then we went out for dinner. That was how I joined the Pretenders. Sorry, it's a long story, but it's interesting. But then shortly after that, like 2 weeks after that, I just joined the band with Blair Cunningham.
Yeah, a good friend of mine.
It was me, Blair, and Chrissy. We were looking for a bass player. because Robbie had left the band, Robbie McIntosh, he was in the band for a while with Blair. And so she had a new lineup. So it was just Blair and me. Blair was the only one left from that other lineup. And
Blair tells me actually the story that he was kind of looking out to get you in the band as well at that point. Yeah, he said to me that he wanted you in the band because I think Robbie McIntosh might have been maybe before you when he moved to McCartney.
Yeah.
And he loved your playing, Blair did.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Well, that's good to know. But so then anyway, I'm in the band for a couple of weeks and then out of the blue, mate, I'm telling you, this is just insane. Because I'm like now in the band. I kind of left King Swamp. And around that time, I was doing a lot of sessions, and the sessions were getting bigger. And, around that time, I did the session with Phil Collins, the But Seriously album. And I played on Another Day in Paradise. I mean, we could talk about that, but that sort of put me in that kind of...
I think we should talk about that, because I listened to that record this morning. You played on 5 tracks on that album. So... Well, we'll get into Another Day in Paradise because how did that happen? What was the connection?
Well, that's because of Hugh Padgham. Because I said, I was doing a lot of sessions, and he was one of my clients.
Right.
He would book me for sessions. I had a few, and I still wasn't in the sort of Premier League. But suddenly I was doing bigger sessions. The first one was with Paul Young and Manu Katché and Pino Palladino. That was the first time I met Pino and Manu, and I thought, wow, these guys that's next level session playing. And so that led on to more things with Pino and Manu. Julia Fordham, she was a singer-songwriter around that time. And Hugh was producing. And then Hugh was about to start doing the new Phil Collins album. And I was in the townhouse with him and I said, oh, really? I'd be up for that. And he went, well, he's got Daryl Stuermer already. And I went, because I was a bit arrogant in those days, you know what I mean? I was still only 20.
Young, come on.
I was 28 years old, and I thought, well, I'll have a go at that, mate. And he said, well, it's kind of taken that gig. And he said, but Hugh liked the way I played. So he said, let me put it to Phil. So he put it to Phil, and Phil was sort of intrigued that this guy wants to hang out on his record. And so cut to, they invite me to the studio, and it just worked.
Was it a great experience?
Yeah, it was a great experience.
There are amazing people on that record. You had, obviously, who else was on it? You had Steve Winwood.
Oh, I mean,
on
Lee
Hammond.
Sklar, yeah.
You had Pino Palladino, Nathan East, even Clapton's played on it. Yeah. I mean, it's like the creme de la creme of players. Yeah. It's funny enough.
The Phoenix Horn section.
Yeah. Even, who else do we have on backing vocals? You had David Crosby and Stephen Bishop.
Yeah.
Amazing people, like the best.
But they weren't there when I was there. When I was there, it was just Phil, Hugh Padgham, and myself. So he just said whatever. There was nothing there.
Right, okay.
So I had carte blanche. So I just thought, let's just have a go. And so I could play whatever I wanted.
When I listened to Another Day in Paradise, it instantly told me why, not being arrogant here myself, but it instantly spoke to me about why Sting wanted you as a guitar player, because the way you were weaving in and out of the melody with the nylon, and then the little the harmonics that you play over the chorus, and then you can hear so much of that sound sort of later in Sting stuff, and then the rock stuff you were covering, because you did 5 tracks on that.
Yeah,
it
I
wasn't
did.
Just,
and a couple of them were singles. Yeah. 3 of them were.
3 of them were singles, so it's like half the record you played on. And you can really hear your style on the record. They really left space for you as a guitar player. So I know obviously Sting must have heard that record and...
Well, no, actually, no, because what happened is that Sting was looking for a guitar player, so he asked Hugh, because Hugh was producing Sting as well. So Hugh said, who's my guy? And Hugh didn't hesitate. He said, get this geezer. So cut to going back. So this ties in nicely. I was in the Pretenders in my sort of honeymoon with Chrissy Hind, still having not really played with her. We just did one jam session and one recording session and a photo shoot, of course. It was all about the look of the band,
Sure.
you know. And it was great fun. But then they invited me to go to New York to go and have a jam with Sting. And I was like intrigued. I thought, Sting? Why would Sting want me in his band? I wasn't a fan. I liked the Police, and I thought I didn't understand what his solo stuff was. I had the Ninja Turtles album.
The Dream of the Blue Turtles.
Yeah, you know. Anyway, I was just being.
Of course.
I had to get that out, you know. So there was that.
I would say.
And then, but I thought, yeah, he's cool. He's sort of like the guy from the Police who's like got nice clothes. He's good looking, and he's a smoothie, like Peter Gabriel. You know, he's like, yeah, all right. He's a smart geezer. Good music. I thought, yeah, this is a bit jazzy, you know, like good causes like the McLaughlin Weather Report type shit. And I thought, yeah, well, I can identify with that. And I thought, okay, well, that's intrigued. So I was intrigued. Of course, you're not going to say no. So I went there. I told Chrissy, look, I'm going to New York. I'm just going to do a jam with Sting. It's nothing serious. I'm still in your band. And she went, be careful. She wasn't happy. I thought, don't worry about it, mate. So I go, we jam. And that worked really well. I thought, finally, after all these years, I was only 29 at the time, I found a home for my way of playing music because everything we did was stylistically diverse. I thought, this is fun because he gets the picture. Because what I like about music, playing music, is I like playing character role. You know, playing from classical guitarist to a metal guitar player. And I understand enough about each genre to kind of pull it off.
Yeah, you cover all the bases.
You know, and I can play country, not as good as a country player, or blues, jazz. All the genres that I play, none of them are authentic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
But that's how Sting approaches music. And I thought, I found the right guy to work with because... But I didn't think that while we were jamming. I thought, well, this ain't working because I'm just playing whatever. I didn't know any of his tunes. I didn't come prepared. But that sort of seemed to work for him because I didn't have I just had my instinct. The only instrument, my only vocabulary as a musician was my instinct. And I thought, well... And then he tested me out. We started with some Ain't No Sunshine. We played, okay, I get that. Sort of bluesy, jazzy.
Bill Withers, yeah.
Yeah, and then we played... I did a Police song, which I think might have been Synchronicity 2, but I didn't know the riff because I wasn't familiar. But so I just, okay, it's an F sharp, you know, all right, get a good sound. And I thought, that's not the riff, but I kind of like it. And then he had the synclavier, you know, that machine.
Sure.
And then he laid down this kind of 11/8 kind of math rock kind of thing at me, like a fuso thing on me. And I thought, no worries, mate. That's right up my Strasser. I've been listening to Weather Report and, you know, and Mahavishnu, even Brand X for forever. So
sure.
this is not intimidating at all. It's easy for me. So, and then he said, I've got this song called Fragile. And I went, I don't know that. And then they played it over the speakers. And I went, oh, yeah, I like that. That was one of the songs of his that I actually liked. But I thought, who's playing guitar on that? Because I saw a video of him playing, and I thought he's miming it, and I didn't think it was him. I thought he's... Mm-hmm. And it was... But what I liked about that song is it had a sort of very Latin American feel. It fit in right with that Latin American kind of... right up my street. Sure. That's like second nature to me to do that sort of Brazilian, South American vibe. And so we played that, and of course I nailed it, as I would, because I get that.
Like falling off a log.
I was playing that when I was a kid, that kind of stuff. And that clinched it. Then after 3 hours, he said, look, I want to talk to you. He was there with Miles Copeland. So it was quite intimidating, actually, to have Miles Copeland, a very powerful guy, Sting, like I'm like a bit starstruck. And then he said, I want to have a word with you. And I thought he was going to politely say, look, thanks for coming, mate, but it was fun. But next. I would have been fine with that because we had a good 3-hour session.
Right.
And I, you know, had a nice hotel room and, you know, then I fly back to UK. He said, I want you to do this. And I went, To do what? I want you to join the band. I thought, really? Are you having a laugh? And so then I was faced with making a decision. I had to let Chrissy know that I was going to leave her band. Because I decided I wanted to do Sting, primarily because I felt like I found a home for my style of musicianship. Pretenders would have been great, but it's only one thing. It's elegant rock and roll.
Yeah, I get that.
Being in a band, and also being in a band. Even though it's Chrissy, I liked the idea of being in a band playing elegant rock, which is what that is, with jangly kind of clean sounds and dirty, not so dirty, but more sophisticated. But it wasn't, I felt that Sting tipped the balance because his music was much more varied. Mm-hmm. And he had all these different styles, these different colors to his music. So I thought, I have to go with this. It wasn't really the career was only just down to what is the best musical option, not which is the coolest gig.
I mean, he's a fantastic bass player. He's a fantastic musician, but I think he's often underestimated as a bass player.
I agree with you.
He's a really great musician.
Like Paul McCartney as well, you know.
Yeah, fabulous bass player. So you were obviously the perfect fit. I think that goes without saying. So I think it's quite a unique situation you were in that 35 years later, you're still playing.
It's incredible.
Because you and I know, like the amount, most of the big stars out there, there's a bit of a revolving door. You might get a couple of albums. Like we had Omar Hakim, who played with Bowie. We got 2 albums, you know, you get the Let's Dance and the Tonight record. And that was it. You know, they move on to another drummer, another guitar player. And there's very few, I think, cases of someone like yourself playing with a superstar, which Sting is, you know, and still being there 35 years
It's
later.
incredible, because I remember, it's quite funny, because when I met him, I thought, well, the first thing I thought, this guy's really old. he was 38, right? And I was 29. I thought, I'm going to catch the end of his career, and then I'm going to get on with my amazing career. And the world is going to see, you know. Sure. But I need this stripe on my, you know, this feather to my cap, just to, it's a good for the resume.
Yeah, sure.
But so we did that tour, and the more I worked with him, and we did the Soul Cages album, and I found a style of playing guitar, electric guitar, through his music. Mm-hmm. So suddenly this character was evolving through his music. And I found a way of playing that I'd never played before like that. It wasn't the way I played on the Phil record or the Chrissy record. I just thought, this music is asking for a different way of approach to guitar playing. And my inspiration was Branford Marsalis and Kenny, that type of voicings, those type of chords, that type of space, use of space. So they were my kind of stars, my guiding stars. So we had a great record and a great tour. And then at the end of that tour, well, I thought, really, well, maybe we're done now. I just did a world tour in 1991. He could let me go, and I'd be happy with that. I really enjoyed it, but he has every right to move on and get Mike Landau or whoever, you know, I mean, Larry Carlton or, you know. Anyone he wanted. Surely this isn't going to carry on. But then a few months went by, then he called me up, said, Dom, you want to come and hang out? Let's play some riffs. And that was the beginning of the Ten Summoners Tales. So it was just him and I. I guess he was interested to see what else I had. I was interested to see what else he had, for sure. And I was surprised to see that he took a different direction. And this solidified our relationship. And he was surprised to see that I was open to change. So this is why we're still together after 35 years. This has been the pattern after every tour. I've always thought, okay, this is the end. And I still think that now. Sure. We're doing a tour now, and I swear it, I believe this has to be the end. I'm not saying to you that I'm going to have this gig forever, and I don't feel that. I don't feel that we will. And I think that's what makes a successful relationship, even in a marriage, is not to sort of project that 5 years from now we'll be together. You have to make it work. Mm-hmm. And the way we make it work is that we're both curious about music, about surprise, about what's possible, and about this play acting thing of character building. So he comes up with lyrics which inspires me to play in a certain way, you know, like this is asking for a bit of a country lick or a humorous lick or like maybe something bossa nova or classical or let's go full metal, you know? He loves that. Actually, the Soul Cages song, the title track, Soul Cages, I was actually in the studio. Are you familiar with that song? It's kind of a rock song. Yeah. I was inspired. I was sort of joking because we were laughing about
Eddie Van Halen-esque. Yeah.
It totally. We were joking about Spinal Tap a little bit. So I had my foot on the desk, you know, and I go do down, and just having a laugh. But he loved it. And it was very Van Halen-esque because I was thinking about the album he did with
Sammy Hagar.
Sammy Hagar with When It's Love, that song. I was thinking it's full on do down, you know. I thought, and it was just a beautiful kind of ballad he was thinking in F sharp minor, but it turned into Soul Cages. So he understood that I can change the character. And that inspired him to kind of approach the bass in a different way. So he was playing more like dum dum, you know, like playing eighths, you know, like rock.
Yeah, like 70s. Jack Bruce.
Yeah, like Jack Bruce. We all love Jack Bruce.
So, funny enough, going through Spotify this morning, top track for Phil Collins is Another Day in Paradise.
Really?
Top track for Sting is Shape of My Heart. So you've got the two #1 tracks for two of the biggest artists in the world.
That's so cool. I mean, that's mind-blowing. I can't believe it, but I knew that Shape of My Heart was quite popular, and that's mainly popular due to all the covers that have happened around Shape. Because when we put that out, I think it was the 4th single on that album. Mm-hmm. The label, everyone loved that song, but it wasn't like the standout track. But it's not until years later that it became a kind of cult song, because a lot of people were using it in different ways.
So when you wrote that motif, that series of, did you know it was that special? Did you feel like that's something really great here?
No. I wrote it kind of as an exercise. I wasn't thinking of a song. I wanted to. Do you want me to show you?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I was just kind of. Let's just turn this up. I was just like. I was always doing things like. I was just doing these kind of pianistic chords. You know, that kind of thing. Interested in how pianists do chords. So then I came up with... just up and down the neck. So it became kind of an exercise, and it's a good finger exercise. And then I settled on and just give it a different rhythm, more like I was thinking about a John Lennon style. It's like that kind of right-hand folk rock type. So I put that kind of rhythm with those chords. and they're good stretches for the hand. And I thought, this is good. And I kept going up and down the neck with it. And so I was in Lake House, in Sting's house, just practicing, because it's really good for warming up. I've got a few warm-up exercises, and that was my warm-up of that time. And he said that, well, what is that? And I'm going, it's my warm-up. And he just said, this is a song. Fantastic. This has to be a song. So I went, really? I thought, yeah, I could see how he could turn it into a song. So so what we did is we went and fired up the drum machine, because it was just the two of us. We didn't have the band then. And we fired up the drum machine and just played some dodgy keyboards, both of us playing badly, one finger at a time, and put it down. And then it really was like that. And then...
Did he come up with that melody right there and then?
Yeah, no. The first thing he did is we did the sort of backing track, and it made sense. All the chord movements all made total sense. And then we navigated our way around a key change, because he wanted to be clever and like, let's have a key change. I thought, we don't need a key change, But he wanted a key change. So we found a way of doing a key change, which was actually really cool. We loved it. And then what he did is he went for a walk in the garden while I was just having a cup of tea. And while he was with the headphones, Walkman.
Back in the day.
And he came back and he said, I think this is a song. And I went, really? So then he recorded a dummy vocal, and it sounded great.
So the first time you heard it must have blown you.
And I just thought, wow, you're kidding me. I was just, this is so cool. I thought, this is fantastic. I wasn't like all ambitious or thinking, wow, this is good for my career or anything. I thought, this is so great that I should come up with a motif that a great songwriter can have the imagination to write lyrics to. That made me feel really good. Quite confident. I thought, this is great.
That's validation as well.
Yeah, validation. That's the word I was looking for. And so it worked really well. And that kind of bonded us in a way. But we weren't thinking of it as a hit, but it was certainly going on the album. And then when the guys came in, when Vinny Colaiuta and David Sanchez came in, of course they understood what they were dealing with immediately, because we had a collection of songs, and they just nailed every song in like 1 or 2 takes.
Amazing, amazing. So in Sting's general process, when he comes to you with a new song, does he tell you what to play, or
No.
have you got a lot of space to do what you want?
It's actually a combination of both, because interestingly enough, when we did Soul Cages, he didn't know me. So he didn't know my style of playing, or I didn't know my style of playing. So I had total freedom on that record, because he was trying to discover who this guitarist was. So he just let me get on with whatever. Hence the Soul Cages song, playing the kind of Van Halen-y style riff, and then just playing all this floaty kind of keyboardy type guitar parts. So, but the more he's known me, the more he's kind of thought, oh, well, I like it when you do that, so can you do that here? And I thought, I've never really liked it when he does that, but sometimes he does do that. He does that more now because he knows the way I play. He knows what I do. So I want you to do that.
He knows you better than you know yourself.
Yeah, I know. I want you to play that kind of style in this song. And I'm going, well, okay, that might not be my instinct. But usually what happens is he lets me find my own way around with something, and then he edits what I do. So it all comes from me, but then he might go, yeah, I love that, but can you simplify this bit? Or take that note out. And I go, why would I take that note out? Because it sounds bigger, he'll say. It sounds bigger with less notes. This was a huge education for me. How can something sound bigger with less?
Yeah, when you take out those thirds.
Yeah, you take out certain notes, and it's actually wider.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and it's taught me a lot about music, He's so instinctive with music, and so he edits what I do, for the most part.
So, but you're quite an instinctive player yourself, so I suppose you need him to allow you to be instinctive.
Yeah, exactly. So he allows me to be instinctive, but he picks up. It's like a game of tennis, He sends the ball back with a different spin. We talk about that a lot. That's the best analogy we can come up with, and by the same token, when he has an idea, like a chord idea, I can do the same for him. Like, it was like that with a few songs on the 10 Seminoles. I mean, on every album that we've done together, I might go to him, you know, Sting, this type of voicing would work better here, or I think you're missing something here. And like, he's interested to know what I think. So we have that kind of a relationship where I can tell him exactly what's possible. So that's the way we work. He has an idea and I give him different options around that idea, because that's my job. Because I'm a sideman. I'm under no illusion that I'm the artist in this. Sure, a few co-writes and all that I'll take it. But my role, and the role of any sideman, should be to make what's there, enhance what is there. Mm-hmm. Not to try and make it your own or anything. It's not about you. Nobody cares about you. What can you do to service the song? Not the artist. No one even cares about the artist. Even Sting doesn't care. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, he's the guy with the least amount of ego out of anyone I've ever worked with. And that says a lot, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. You serve the song.
Serve the song. What is the song asking for? Not what is the artist asking for. The artist can navigate you towards that answer because he understands the lyrics better, or they understand what the narrative is. So if you're playing in a certain style, it might interfere with that narrative. But really, the boss is the music.
It's funny. I heard a funny story about on Shape of My Heart. The live, some guitar player said you weren't playing it the way you played on the record.
I took that personally. I mean, maybe I took it a bit badly, because I did this. You've probably seen I did an interview with Rick Beato where I go, and I feel like I might have been a bit harsh on the geezer, because I mean, I didn't really understand what he was. So of course he didn't mean it like that, but
he's just a guitar nerd, you know.
Yeah, it was a knee-jerk reaction. You know, he went. Well, I mean, the cover of the video was Sting's most copied riff. And I thought, hello, and it was Shape. And then I didn't see what the rest of the interview was, so I misinterpreted what he was really. But it was kind of like it was some people call clickbait, you know. But who cares?
Yeah.
Now I'm friends with that guy, so we're mates.
All's well that ends well.
Yeah.
I know that his feet are the swords of a soldier. I know that the clubs, the weapons of war. I know that diamonds mean money for these songs, but that's not the shape of my heart. That's not the shape of my heart.
Speaking of guitars, so what do you prefer, nylon or electric, narratively, musically speaking?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I think for electric, I see myself as an accompanist,
Right.
of songs. I don't think of it as an instrumentalist musician for me. That's been done by Jeff Beck, John McLaughlin, many others. Matteo, you know, people like that who specialize in telling the story on an electric guitar with pickups and, you know, amps, maybe effects. I can't seem to tell my story on electric instrumentally, but I can as an accompanist. I love it. With a nylon string guitar, I can tell a story. As a lead musician,
Sure.
I can tell a story of because what I love about an acoustic guitar, and I was inspired by Andres Segovia, the classical guitarist, who was one of the pioneers.
I used to listen to him as a kid.
Yeah, and Julian Bream and John Williams and all that. What I loved about these guys is that, and what I've thought was amazing. And Baden Powell, all these Brazilian guys.
Maybe Paco de Lucia.
Yeah, is that they're playing the melody, the bass and the chords. I thought, it's a small orchestra. This is an orchestra, and you're the conductor. And I love the idea of being able to tell a story and do a full production as a solo guitarist. And that's why I'm always drawn to classical guitar, because that's exactly what it is. And I'm inspired by that. The Tárrega, Fernando Sor, all these composers. I learned a lot of those pieces, and I learned a lot of Bach pieces because they do exactly that. And so I love the nylon string guitar. I think that's where I can best interpret my music. As a sideman, electric is my favorite instrument because I can really do what I need to do. You know, of course, with Phil Collins and a few other musicians, and with Sting even, I do play nylon, like on Shape of My Heart and Another Day in Paradise. I played nylon string guitar. It just felt like the right thing to do at the time. And, you know...
It's a big part of the tune, though, if you listen to the melody in it, and all, as we said, the harmonics, and then the way it's weaving in and out. I think on those records, the guitar was quite forward. You know, you hear it. It's very... I mean, I was listening out for today when I was trying to analyse the songs a little bit. But I think it's a huge part of the, you know, the narrative of the tune moving through. And, I mean, even getting onto that, it's always a contentious kind of subject, but when you're working with someone, say, like Sting, and does he come with songs completely finished, chordally finished?
No. No, usually what he comes up with is a hook. And it's the same way that I write music. It's interesting. We have the same approach to music. What he's interested in is the relationship between two chords. Is what is interesting about these two chords that maybe clash a bit. It's colors. It's like art, I think. And that's what his fascination is first with that. So it's not a full arrangement. That's why it's good to have someone to collaborate with. Like, oh, wow. So where can we take this? So I might show him where to go with it. But there are times that he comes in with a full arrangement, and I think, how did he come up with that? I have sort of jealousy issues around that. I think, where does this shit come from?
But going back to the other scenario.
It's amazing.
Going back to the other scenario, is that not writing?
It is writing.
And does he credit you on those tracks as a writer?
Oh, I see what you mean. No, you know, it's interesting you ask that, because in today's currency of songwriting, it's quite normal to see, let's say, a Grammy-nominated song. You'll see the songwriters will be up to 8 or 12 writers. And that's anyone who made even the slightest contribution to a song would be considered for a writer. Maybe even the Uber delivery pizza or whatever, you know.
Change a word, get a third.
Change a word, get a third. I like that. But, you know, the way I'm pretty clear the way I see this is because if he has an idea, like a song like If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, or where I did have a big part in the structure, the architecture of that song, but if he comes in with an idea and I'm inspired by it, then I do my job. I do what I do best, and I like to arrange.
Right.
I like to come up with stuff, but it's his idea. The Hounds of Winter, it's totally him. Those chords are absolutely him, but I can add a lot to it. But I don't feel that I should take any ownership of the writing because I didn't come up with the initial idea. I'm just doing my job. Mm-hmm. So I believe in it that way. But that's why songs like Shape of My Heart or La Belle Dame or Lullaby to an Anxious Child, I've got like about 10 songs I've written with him. Of course we're co-writers because I came in with the idea and then he did the same thing the other way around. He like showed me the options around this idea. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course he should be entitled to credit as well.
I think it's for a lot of situations people fall out about writing, you know.
I know they do. It's a shame that actually, a lot of bands fall out because of that, because it's power, and then it turns into a money issue, and I think it's very difficult. I mean, Sting once put it like, a band is like a failed democracy, in a way, true. Because it's unless you set the goalposts up properly, like bands like Metallica have done that. The Beatles did that with Lennon and McCartney. and Coldplay, I believe,
U2.
they share the publishing. So that's what keeps them together. But the Police, let's face it, Sting wrote 95% of the Police music. So he took the lion's share of the publishing income. Well, 95% of it, which can't have been easy, you know?
Yeah, being
and that
band.
creates tension.
Well, especially later on, you know, the tax bill comes in and you finish touring.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I remember talking to Jack Bruce about that, and Ginger Baker didn't get any credits. I'm used to drummer, and then Ginger was very bitter about it his whole life. But Jack said to me he would have given him the credit. He was like, if he'd just asked. He didn't even ask. So he's like, he never asked us at the time. So they just didn't. Eric.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did. Eric,
But did he make a big contribution to the arrangements?
Well, he did. You know, he brought in his own Ginger style,
Yeah.
you know, how he played the drum and made the whole thing swing, but really not really musically. So I feel, yeah, that's a contentious one.
I like the idea of shared publishing.
Yeah, I do as well. Like you too, as I said, do it. And
Yeah.
I think it makes for a harmonious camp. Everybody knows they're going to be taken care of. And let's be honest, we're making a living as well. So I think taking care of everyone is it's not just you tour and then that's the end of it. That's the end of the income. You know, if you're not getting PRS and, you know, performance
Yeah.
finance coming in, it's very difficult, especially for artists later on in their lives. You know, there's no passive income.
I remember I had a situation once. I wrote a song with Mark Hudson. I don't know if you know him. He's from Los Angeles. He's friends with Steven Tyler, with Ozzy. He's a producer. I wrote a song for him that we wrote for Ozzy
Right.
called Crash. I mean, it was like a metal-y, kind of punky type song. And Ozzy passed on it. So, okay, no worries. But then he played it to Steven Tyler, who's his mate. Steven liked it. And then him and Joe Perry wanted to put it on the 9 Lives albums. And it was the flip side to Don't Want to, you know,
Right.
Don't Want to Miss a Thing. What's it called? That huge hit.
Yeah.
And so I got a flip side to a big single.
Brilliant.
And in those days, having a flip side actually meant something.
Yeah, it really did.
And
The B-side.
yeah, so, but what happened in that situation is that they wanted 50% of the publishing. And I said to Mark told me about that, and I was on the phone to Mark. I was, this is outrageous. They can't take 50%. You know, this is my life, you know. And Mark is going, calm down, mate. You know, this is Aerosmith. And they're at the top of their game. This is how things work. Because what they did is they came up with a dummy kind of bridge. They went to D instead of C.
Right.
You know, like that thing that you said about lyric, who just won't
Change a word, get a third, yeah.
Yeah, it was
Change
one
a
of
chord,
those.
get a third.
So suddenly I thought, you know what, you're right. It's better to have 25% of something that's big than 50% of something that no one will ever hear. So that's how publishing works. You need to sometimes forfeit a bit.
yeah, I think you need to give a little, take a little, and just look
Yeah.
at the bigger picture, you know, because obviously they just won't use the track, and then that's that.
Yeah.
And that song will probably never ever be used again. But some of them do get greedy, you know. Some acts get very.
It's a
greedy.
shame when that happens, and it
they
all
want
gets
to.
nasty.
Yeah, when it all goes down that road. Outside of Sting, who was your favourite artist to work with, do you think? What was the most pleasure you got outside of Sting, musically speaking?
Well, actually, my favourite, I would, Carl Wallinger from World Party is one, who came from that Waterboy stock. He's sort of a Mike Scott protege in a way. And Mike Scott's a very interesting guy. So I've kind of worked with Mike by proxy.
Yeah, The Whole of the Moon.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
interesting guy. But to answer your question, I'm pretty clear about this. I worked with Mark Hollis from Talk Talk. He did a solo album, which actually Robbie McIntosh is on as well. And I worked with him for about a year, just hanging with him, learning from him, just his approach to music. There is the most interesting musician I've ever worked with, I think. Apart from Sting and of course Peter Gabriel, I worked with him and Paul Simon. I mean, you know, we can go on, but to really answer your question, I would say Mark Hollis is the most astounding musician that I worked with for a lot of reasons. Him and Sting, I would say. Because Mark is just a genius. I know people think of Talk Talk, yeah, it's Talk Talk and it's synthy pop, but that guy is. If you really listen to that stuff,
They're amazing. Those tracks.
It's so sophisticated. Just ignore the synth sounds and the kind of 80s snare sound.
What was that other album they did though?
The Colour of Spring, Spirit of Eden.
Spirit of Eden
my
was very
favourite album
different.
was called Laughing Stock, which was the third album they did for the major label. My favourite album of theirs is the one that got them dropped. It's called Laughing Stock. So they got dropped, and then, which it's a genius album.
Well, Spirit of Eden wasn't very popular either. Because
No.
remember after the big hits, and then they come, and then well, that's an amazing record now. And you listen back to it, Mark Feltman on harmonica.
Yeah.
He does that amazing intro.
Yeah,
at the very
and he does it
beginning
through
of
an
the
amp as well.
Yeah, he distorts it, and
Yeah.
it's a fantastic
It's incredible
record.
stuff. And David Rhodes played on some of that, maybe great guitar player who plays with Peter Gabriel. He was a big influence on me too as a session player, because I kind of took over. He was the sort of the session player wearing the cape and going around London. And, I was the sort of in his slipstream, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
But I was learning from the way he used to approach sessions. But anyway, Mark Hollis, without a doubt, he's one of the most extraordinary musicians I've ever had the pleasure of working with.
And on your solo stuff, you've gone mainly more instrumental over the years. I mean, you've done like 15 something plus
I remember,
records, all fabulous. Listen to them all. And my wife was a big fan. She was like, who's that you're playing? I really love that. Anyway, not being nice,
cool.
but she just, listening to him, especially late at night, because it's really good late at night listening. I'd have it in the house. And it was like I was playing went through all of them. So was that a conscious choice, or what made you go down that road rather than writing traditional songs and getting a singer in?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, because I remember after my first couple of tours with Sting, people were pushing me to do like a record. And I had, as you can imagine, around that time, a very formidable phone book.
Sure.
I could have called anyone, and I had some very good mates and on speed dial. Pino, Manu, Vinny, a few great lyricists, singers. And I remember, but the pressure I felt to come up with like an incredible record, with an all-star cast. And I remember just woke up one day and I thought, no, that's not it. I want to go back to doing what I really wanted to do from the beginning. Because remember how we started this interview? I told you all I wanted to be was an acoustic guitarist playing instrumental music. So I'm getting to live the dream, but it's through the day job.
You're kind of gone full circle.
Yeah, I've gone full circle. So now I'm doing records like with ECM. I used to listen to ECM albums when I was 17 and 18 going, this is my dream is to do something like that, like Pat Metheny or Egberto Gismonti or Ralph Towner. I want to be Abercrombie.
Yeah.
I want to be that. And now I get to do that. So, of course, I jumped on this. So, because I had a bit of leverage as a player, I thought, if I'm going to offer my music to whatever public it may be, I don't care if it's big or small, I want it to be that, instead of like trying to do like trying to do something successful in pop. The only time I did that was to go down that route, which might have been one of my more curious, not regretful, career decisions, was when I did an album called Shapes, which is a classical album, because around that time in 2002 and 3 and 4 and 5, crossover classical music was huge. And so I was approached by Decca and BBC, do you want to do a classical record? And I thought, that would take a bit of nerve to do that. But then I was listening to all the music around that time, it was very de rigueur at that time, like to do kind of arrangements of Mozart and Beethoven and Bach, but with a groove. I thought, it's a bit tacky, but I'll have a go. I thought, yeah, why not?
A bit Mach.
But then I thought, now I'm going to use my phone book. So I get Pino, I get, Jason Rebello, people who, and I said to the guys when they came into the studio, because this was the first time I had a real budget, it was a big label. And I said, guys, let's treat this like it's my record, except we were playing classics. And so they understood what I meant. So we did that, and it sounded great. And then we gave it to John Ingham, Peter Ingham.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Ingham, great arranger, and he did the strings. And then it sounded, oh my God, this sounds like a mainstream kind of crossover classical record. And it went to #1 in the classical chart for like 3 weeks, maybe longer. It was like huge. And it's my most selling record to date. But I didn't intend to make that record. We made a video, we were on Classic FM. It was like I did the Classical Music Awards, and there were a few people, you know, in the classical world going, who the fuck does he think he is? Coming into our scene and just destroying like that, because we destroyed. And I was embarrassed by that.
I thought the record was great, but if I'm being honest, again, I listened to it yesterday, and I thought it was a little string heavy, but the guitars were great, but I felt they were a little bit too far back at times. I would have liked the guitar to be more forward. But here nor there, it was still a very successful record. But I suppose the classical people wanted to make sure it was classical.
Yeah, I know, but I had to delegate. This was the only time in my career that I've delegated. I thought, okay, I'm standing back from it, because most of the time I'm in control. The ECM is a bit different, because with Manfred Eicher, I'm like, he's very in control. He's like he's a serious producer. So I relinquish a lot of my opinions to him. But that's what you do when you're working with a producer. Because, you know, the difference with working a producer and doing it yourself is when you do it yourself, what you're creating is something comparable to a selfie, but a good one. You're putting yourself out to the world the way that you believe you are, with the right angle, the right lighting. But a producer will have you at this angle, not your good side. You don't like the lighting on your nose or your chin, but it is a better picture of you. This is the thing. It's like, you know how a photographer always chooses the one that he chooses, and then you go through the pictures and you'll choose the one where you think you look cool. But that's why working with a producer is it's good to give away that power, or I wouldn't call it power, but that control.
Fun question.
Yeah.
Best show, worst show?
Oh, it's really hard to say.
I know you've done so many shows over the years, but one where it was just amazing, one where it all went horribly wrong.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I mean, first of all, I'm sure you've spoken to musicians. When you have a good show, there's no better feeling in the world. There's nothing better. But as you can imagine, when you have a bad show, you just want to die. And you think it's like, oh, that was awful. How could it suck so much? So I've had both of those many times where I've felt like I want to stop. Just put me in a hole somewhere, bury me. And other times I've felt on the top of the universe. But best show, yeah, it's really hard to say. But I mean, I'll go to like one example of best. It's probably my second show with Sting was in Santiago, Chile, in front of 86,000 people. We were with Kenny Kirkland, Vinnie Colaiuta, Sting, and me doing headlining an Amnesty show. I mean, to play a gig like that with that sort of atmosphere was just stunning. And it's not just the size of it that matters, because I can play in a small gig in front of 60 people and still feel that it's meaningful. But the thing about playing a big show, the difference that people don't really understand, is that it's really not so much about you. So that kind of takes away a lot of the pressure.
Sure.
Because when I'm playing in front of an audience this size, I feel a lot of pressure, because everyone's like, okay, show us then. And I'm like, oh God, I can't play, I suck, you know? So worst gigs, I mean, have we got time?
There's got to be one that stands out.
Well, I mean, one that stands out. Okay, I was with World Party. We were opening for U2 on the Joshua Tree album. I mean, that's when they broke out.
Sure,
you remember that?
Record, yeah.
In 87. And so we're on stage with World Party. We're opening the afternoon in Wembley Stadium. And I get a little bit overexcited with my dance moves. And I'm going backwards and I've hit the deck. I fall behind my monitor.
Right.
In front of like how many? 80,000 people. And That was not something to be too chuffed about.
Did you jump back out?
Yeah, I did. It's very difficult to stand up when you've fallen over holding a guitar.
It is.
No, but I mean, to be honest with you, worst gigs for me, really, what defines a worst gig or a best gig? For me, the best gigs are the ones where I'm connected with the band on such a deep level that it doesn't matter how well it's going down with the audience. If I feel that the band are connected and really, really focused with each other, of course that connection is going to happen with the audience. Those are the best gigs. And they can happen in the smallest towns, in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it'll be tonight. And the worst gigs are when I feel that we're not connected. Even though it goes down with incredibly well with 3 encores. I don't care. I want to just go home and I don't want to sign any autographs, but sometimes you have to and do that, especially in this level. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, of course.
And those are the gigs where I just want to go home. I want to go to my hotel and just hide under the bed. Under the bed, not even under the duvet.
So the experience of being like a side member, someone like Sting, and then obviously now you're touring your own solo act and being the band leader.
Yeah.
That's a very different experience, isn't it?
Well, I've learned a lot from Sting, obviously. And one of the biggest things I've learned from him, there's many things, but the one that stands out is if you let your musicians shine, then you shine. It's just, wow. It makes so much sense. And just let them play. Let them express themselves. Give them freedom. And that's a huge lesson I've learned from Sting. And to be a band leader is... Because you're kind of navigating, it's all like a football team, you're just trying to, we need the win. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
How do we get that? We need to feel good about what we're doing. And if the people around me feel proud of what they're doing, there's no better feeling as a band leader. And that's one of the biggest lessons I learned from Sting. Not all band leaders are like that. They're out there for themselves, they're just using the band to just play whatever they want them to play. Sting wants you to play at your best. Bring out the best in you. And I try to bring out the best in my band. That's the biggest tip I learned from him as a band leader, is to do that with my band.
I think what's amazing as well about your life is your kids.
Yeah.
We had Rufus on the podcast. He's an amazing young man, I have to say. I was really taken by him, and he was a great musician as well. I mean, you must be very proud of him. Misty as well. And I think, as your family, obviously, when you were growing up, was very musical. Now your family's very musical, but... So, and you brought Rufus into the band with you for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, he was in the band with Sting, because Sting was looking for a guitarist, and he's known Rufus all of Rufus's life, since Rufus was a toddler. Because I joined Sting's band when he was only 4. So we needed someone to hold down some simple rhythm parts, and to get a really seasoned player that almost would have been too qualified. You know what I mean? Overqualified. So we thought Rufus would be good, because he's always been doing sound checks with us, and he's not fazed by Sting.
Right.
So he was perfect. He was a fantastic addition to the band. I really enjoyed playing with him, and it was just great. Great timing. It's almost like we have the same sort of timing as you would, because we're in the same family. Like Eddie Van Halen and his brother Alex, they have this timing thing. When you have siblings in bands, they just have their own pocket, their own time feel. Yeah. And so we had that, Rufus and I. And he was in the band for 6 years, but Sting changes his lineup every... thank God I've been in every single lineup that he's come up with for the last 35 years. And Rufus was in the lineup for 6 years, which I think is a really, really good stretch. And then Sting wanted to change the way we make music.
Is he making a new record, Sting?
We're always thinking about it. Yeah, it's coming up with new tunes. The thing about making albums now is like, how relevant is it to make an album? We've reached that point in the music industry has reached a point where it's less relevant, I think, to do an album. Maybe a few tracks, but people do albums. Even great successful pop artists, they'll put an album out. And then what I don't understand is that, then you look at the Billboard and the top 8 songs are from that artist on the top 10. But that's not how hit records used to work in our day. It's like, they used to be, a song was a song that was a buzz. Now I see songs that are in the top 10. I don't even know what or who they are. And if you played them to me, I wouldn't recognize them. But, you know, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was a buzz about a record that was in the top 40.
Sure.
It meant something. You'd go on top of the pops. It's like, wow, we're number 37. You know?
Right, yeah.
And this is exciting, and it's a song that people know and people can whistle to. So now there's nothing in the top 10 that I know now. Maybe occasionally there'll be a Bruno Mars song, but Bruno Mars is now sounds like old-fashioned music now because it's got structure. Mm-hmm. It's got verses and choruses. It's like he's one of the last ones left. I mean, Taylor Swift to another degree, I think she's interesting, but I just don't really connect with her music. I think it's well-produced music, but I don't find any of her songs really memorable. Mm-hmm. I want them to be memorable. My daughter listens to it, and she likes it, but I don't. Billie Eilish is interesting, I think, but that's already, it's like, people have moved on from that now, it seems.
It's context, isn't it, I suppose? For you and I to listen to that kind of music now, it doesn't really make sense. I don't say it's good or bad. It just doesn't make sense to me or to you. To some other kid, it makes fantastic sense. It's their time and their music. Honestly, for me, I don't really relate to it, if I'm being honest. I don't sound like an old fart, but I don't connect with it. And I don't listen to it. I try, and I really struggle with it to try and make sense of it. But it is a context. It's a different time and space.
I know.
It's a different
and I don't want to
generation.
Sound,
you know.
I don't want to sound like the old guy going, "Oh, it was better back in the day," you know, because that's my parents used to do that. So I don't want to be that guy. But,
I know, I don't want to be either, but I am sometimes.
You know, but
I say the music has it got any better since Hendrix and rock? Has it got any better since?
Well, to the new generation, it is fantastic and it works. And it really means something to them. So that means something to me. And I think it's great. If I can have a part in this industry, then I'm really, really happy for it, you know. And luckily, I do still have some relevance in playing live music instrumentally, and I'm working with an artist who's kind of a heritage act. You know, so it's not about us doing a new record. It's like with the Stones or with Bruce or with, you know, does anyone really want to hear 5 or 6 new songs from the Stones on there? That would be the time to go and get a drink.
Right.
Or to go to the toilet, because I mean, I suppose, you know what I mean?
And do you speak to Sting about this? Does he feel
Yeah, we do talk about it. We don't always agree on that, because Sting still wants to wants to make music that sounds relevant and like meaningful now, but I don't really agree with that. I think I'm trying to push him to forget what people might want.
Yeah, like the record he made with Shaggy was an interesting choice.
Whatever, but I think what I'm pushing him to do is just to make music that you like. And no one else. Just do it for yourself, which is how he started writing songs in the first place. But the fact that it grabbed everyone's imagination was a bonus. But that wasn't the original intention, I don't think, to write hits. He wrote songs that came from him, and that's what everybody needs to do. Just forget about trying to do something commercial, because then you will write something commercial.
So for you yourself, as a solo artist moving forward, is that going to be your modus operandi? Like do separate songs or EPs rather than full albums?
Maybe, I don't know. I'm still working with ECM. I've got another album in the works at the moment. So I don't know. It just doesn't hold the same currency as it used to. Having an album, there's a new album coming out. Nobody cares. When we used to do albums with Sting, they weren't just at the head of the music press. They were in the news. We were in the news, in the mainstream news. Sting's got a new album out. Peter Gabriel's got a new album out. U2 have got a new album out. It was in the news. Sure. It was on CNN or like, it was like newsworthy. Now then it became like music newsworthy. And now it's what is newsworthy now?
But I suppose if you just need to say something, you need to say it.
That's important. That's another thing I would try to encourage anyone, particularly, Sting as well, is like, what are we dealing with here? What's on your mind? Not like, what would grab people's imagination or their attention. That's the wrong way to go about songwriting. I think you need to write about what you believe in. I believe in that strongly. And I do that as an instrumental musician. I come up with tunes, and it's the same with styles and music. It has to come from the heart, or else it's never going to reach anyone else. There's no way. How could it, you know?
I mean, that's the bottom line, isn't it? It has to connect with an audience.
Yeah.
I think there are more people out there than you think, but that want to hear albums, me included.
Probably, yeah. I mean, vinyl, I know vinyls, people are interested in that, and I love a vinyl. Yeah, and I love albums too, sure. But I don't think that's it used to be the holy grail of the industry was the record industry. That was being signed to a major and just putting out your record and the right marketing campaign, promo tour, blah, all this. This was really important back in the day. And we used to invest a lot of our energy and money to do things like that.
I'm going to ask you a little favour. We should finish up now because you've got a show to do. And it's been amazing talking to you. Fantastic going through it from the beginning to where we are right now. Could you play us something on the guitar of your own?
Yeah, sure. I'll play this little tune.
And we can use it playing out on the end credits.
Yeah.
Nice. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dominic. That was wonderful. Thank you. I could listen to that all day, every day.
That's a little folk tune called Valium.
I was going to say there's a folky element to that, yeah.
I'm a folky at heart.
Yeah, that's gone right back to Americana.
Oh, yeah, man.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for your time, man. That was amazing.